run npx create react app, which is for creating the application. Next one is to run the application, we need to use npm run start. Okay, so this is a command that which helps us to run the application. Run the application is needed actually. For example, you can see here, these are all the library that I need to run my React application. So automatically these libraries will be added by this package.json. In case if you want to add some more library like material UI, some other library that you want, for example, you want to create a PDF file, that library you can able to add it here. So whatever the libraries that you want to add in the React application, that can be added into this place actually here. And these are all the commands which helps you to run the React application. If you want, you can able to modify it, but as of now, don't just modify it actually here. Everything is correct, it will automatically run without any issues. Now you can see here, I have a home, I have a about, I have a contact actually here. This is a basics of creating the component and calling it from other places. Okay, now what is the use of this approach? This is not ultimate one. The actual approach is by when you are using a React router. Okay, so React routing is nothing but whenever you are having a multiple components, instead of loading into the one component, it has to be loaded into the URL, which means, as you can see here, web application means it is for routing, but I'm using this routing library. If you are using a Next.js, if you are using a another called another JS, I think there's another library which I couldn't able to remember. So they have their own library, but I'm using a raw which is ReactJS, so it's not having the library. Okay, it's all your wish how you want to use all these things actually here. Fine. Now coming back to this one. Okay, so where is this? Okay, so this is the library which helps us to install the router actually here. Okay, so fine. Now let me install the library npm install react router DOM at this one actually. Okay, I am going to install this library. So paste this one. As soon as you immediately we created the application, we added the router for our application. By giving the appropriate URL as per the configuration, it loads the appropriate component. But as will be enough to integrate the REST API, which means the fetch method which is available in the React application or which is coming from the React library. This is my URL that I want to use, and the method type. So I just mentioned the method which is called get. It can be small letter or capital letter, it's all fine, but I'm using a capital as the standard. And the method is get actually. If it is post, you have to mention post. If it is put, you have to mention as put. But I'm using a get as they mention as a get. How I know the get? Because in the documentation they clearly mention as date. So I'm using a get actually here. Okay, one second guys. One second, let me. Okay, so here I'm using a get actually here. Now let me fine. All these things are fine, but still it's not enough. What we need to do, this is not just a normal method. If you see the documentation, whenever I'm hovering on the mouse, you can see here, this is a documentation, and at the end you can see there is a promise. Okay, this is a response from this function. What it means is, this promise means from this function we are not going to extract the exact value. This is going to be the promise actually. What is meant by promise means, promise is like some interface which tells you this response from this method may take some time, but we don't know what is the exact time. It may be 2 minutes, it can be 2 seconds, it can be 3 seconds, it can be 10 seconds, it can be anything. So promise means it is telling the output from the function may take any time, but we don't know what is the exact time. That is called promise in the JavaScript. So what I am telling is, till it gets a response, wait. So I am telling there is a keyword called await. What it means is, I am telling whenever the response comes from this method, wait for that time actually here. So for this one I am using await actually here. Okay, fine. So this is fine. What I am telling is, till it gets a response from the API, wait it. Next I am extracting the response, which means, so here also one more thing actually here. What is this thing is, whenever the response comes from the API, which means from the URL, convert into the JSON or extract the JSON from the response. Extract the JSON from the server response. Why it has to be extracted? Because the above response in the streaming thing. Above response in the streaming. Streaming, means it's not like exact output. It will be in a continuous process. So they, as per the network response, the response in the streaming. So I am telling, once the responses in the streaming is completed, extract the JSON response from the server actually. So I am using one more await, which means till the extraction is completed, do the process again and again. Okay, all these things are fine. But now, as we are using await method, I don't want to wait my entire program, which means I told the JavaScript to wait, which means I told the React library as well as the JavaScript promise, I am told that it has to wait. But while waiting, it should not wait for the entire application. Okay, so what I am telling is the entire function should run in a separate thread or separate process. It should not wait my main process. So what I am telling, I am using a one async actually here. What's mean by async? So async is nothing but asynchronous. Sorry, it has to be mentioned here. Async is nothing but it's asynchronous, which means whatever I am writing inside the function should run in the separate process, and there you can mention await and all these things. But I don't want to make my entire application to wait because of this scenario. Understand? This is called my, one second guys, this is called async and await of handling the promise inside the JavaScript application as well as React actually. Again I am telling make sure this code has to be executed as separate process, because inside this I am using a wait code. Wait means it has to wait for some time actually here. Okay, this is called await actually here. Fine. So now here I am using a one console.log just to check whether my output is working fine or not actually here. That's it. Okay, everything is fine. I'm creating a function, I'm calling the API, I told to wait, and once it is wait, again wait for extracting the JSON, which means once the 6th line completed, go to the 8th line. Once the 8th line completed, then go to the 9th line. But all the waiting process will happen only inside the function. This function should run in a separate process. This should not delay my entire application. Okay, fine. Now what we need to do, we need to check this application. Okay, everything is fine. Now the last only one scenario, I have created one function. This function I don't want, it has to be executed only whenever I am calling. So what I am going, after clicking the button only I can able to see the user list. But I want to see the user list as soon as I get into the web page actually. So for that what we need to do, go to the home.js. This is the get data function which can be called from the button click. Instead of button click, I want to load the function as soon as I come into the function. So what we need to do, I need to use one called use effect. I will tell you what is this use effect, but inside the use effect I need to mention my function called get data. Okay, this is the one. Here I need to mention this one. Okay, what is meaning of this entire syntax actually? Use effect is the React hook which will be called during the page load actually. Okay, it has lot of scenario. I'm not going with all these things. I will mention like below code will be triggered during the first rendering of the page. Okay, how it can be called for the first rendering of the page? Okay, generally what is the meaning of this use effect is, this use effect will be triggered whenever I am changing the data of the variable. But which variable, that has to be mentioned inside the square bracket. But now I didn't mention anything. What it means is it has to be triggered on the first load of the page actually here, which means I am telling whenever this entire page is getting loaded for the first time, call this function. That's it. Okay, so whenever I am calling this page first time, it will be called actually here, it will be called automatically. So now let me refresh the page. Oh my god, one second. I think I have to call this below this one. Okay, I need to call from the bracket actually. This is one. So now let me refresh it. You can see here without clicking on the button, you can see the output actually. Let me refresh it one more time. You can see here, without calling the function or without clicking on the button, I can able to see the response actually here. Okay, maybe I am just comment the button also to your understanding. So let me click refresh on one. You can see immediately I can able to see the response actually here. Okay, so without clicking on the button also, it is working fine actually. Okay, so this is how our application can be called trigger. For example, I don't know how to. Okay, for example, okay, just consider this one. You are going to the Gmail application. So whenever you are loading into the Gmail application, immediately all of your inbox are getting loaded. How this is working? This is because you are just inside this. They are calling on the API. That API will load all of your inbox without refreshing the page actually. Okay, so this is how your API integration will work in your real-time application. So which means we just see here 3 hooks. One is use effect. Okay, once again. Okay, this is called use effect, which will be called whenever I am calling on the function, and there is a contact.js, which is nothing but your this one. And here I think we saw one hook called use state, which helps us to update the UI, and there is one more thing called okay, use state we saw, and there's one more on change. This is also an event that we saw, on change, on click. These are the 2 events that we have seen in our application actually. Okay, so there's a lot of things is there. I think mostly if you are handling input box, we can go for on change and we can go for on click. These are the major things that you can able to handle it actually here. Okay, fine. So we have a current page, we are passing the data to another page, and this is one, we are setting the value to our variable by calling this event. Whatever I am using a I can go for this current value of the text box and calling our API with appropriate value, and this is working fine actually. Okay, this is how you have to build the application properly actually. For example, okay, in the front end, what we need to do, we will call the API, show the data, we will send the data to API and showing the response in our API, and list the user details. Like this, we have to show everything properly in our application actually here. Okay, so this is how it works actually here. Yes, so any queries that you guys wants to ask? Yeah, this user filter, now it has all the data, which is fine. But now what I'm telling is, whenever anything changes in the text box, I want to call this function called change val, and immediately I want to filter my user list, which is user